Alright, so let's identify a 70's bass. So this is a 77 pbass. Well, it was made in 76, but it was sold in 77. And let's look at why I make that argument. Let me close this door. Alright, it's a dope bass. I haven't played it yet. I just got it today. I drove to New York for it. I accidentally, the guy wanted cash, so I had to, it's Sunday, but I figured I could still go to the ATM. So I drove all the way to New York City, and then I was like, alright, before I go to his place, I gotta get cash. So I looked up Chase on Google Maps, and I took the nearest exit and went to the nearest one. Well, it turns out it was in Harlem, 125th Street, literally the worst street in Harlem. So ended up getting off at Harlem. It's really sketchy, bunch of homeless dudes. Felt pretty bad for them, honestly. But it turned out I couldn't get money anyway because the bass cost more than my withdrawal limit, which is like $500, I think. So I just Venmo'd him, easy. But yeah, he handed me the bass. He didn't really know much about it, but I'm here to identify it. So let's do it. So first things first, I took everything apart. I don't know if you can see this. Pickguard's here. The table's a little bit of a mess. But I took all the screws out. Some are original, some are not. So let's start with the body. So, in 1970, the bodies, they have a bunch of identifiers. One way to tell if a body is from the 70s, first off, is everything in the 70s was very square. If you can see the contours and the body, it's very square. So you can see that right here. It's way more skinnier in like the 60s, early 60s. I just had a 1960 P-bass, and the body was like way slimmer than this and way lighter. This is a dense piece of alder, I think. Alder might be ash. I think alder for the opaque finishes. So, first thing I want to look at is if the finish is original. So, in the 70s, I forget starting when, for opaque finishes like this, they usually would use a white primer underneath. So they would put like a wood sealer, then a primer, and then the color coat, and then their poly over. So if you can see here, get the light on it, this is what the original finish used to look like. It's Olympic white, and then it kind of aged to this cheesy color. But we call that Olympic white in Fender terms. But if you can see spots like here where it's turning almost white, there's more in the back. That's because that's the white underneath. It's the primer underneath. They do that for other colors too. Like I know black. I've had a few black tellies, and if you look in the screw holes, like let me try zooming in on one. If you zoom into the screw hole here, you'll see it's white. You see that? It's white right there. So, yeah, that's the white underneath. So yeah, so the finish already, you see checking, and like, you see how it aged right here versus under the pickguard. So that's a good indicator because the weather checking patterns are correct. Sometimes if you look at a lot of these, you can just tell what's a Fender finish and what's not. But this looks pretty good to my eye, but let's make some more arguments. So right here, the neck pocket. It's actually a great place to look to see if a finish is original. Why? Because if you know how they sprayed these instruments, then you'll know what it should look like. And when they spray these Fender finishes, they spray it from an angle. And if you were trying to refin the guitar and you didn't work for Fender, you'd probably do it differently. So in this case, you can see right here that there's, let me turn it, there's paint right here on the side, right? And a little bit like right here, but the whole neck pocket isn't covered with paint. That's a good way to tell. If it was refinished, you'd probably see way more paint in this pocket. Usually with the Fenders, from how they spray it from an angle, only like one side will have like that paint on it, or maybe both, but usually like not in the middle completely. Or if it is completely, sometimes you'll know that it's original because of what color it is. Like on a sunburst, it should usually be black. If you see like different, because the sunburst, right, it's like that yellow, then the red, and then the black. So it should be black around here. If you see like yellow, which should be in the middle of the guitar here, then that's how you know it's a refin. Or at least it's a strong argument. Obviously there's people who know way more than me. I'm not claiming to be an expert, but so the finish looks pretty good. If you look in the pockets over there too, it's focusing. If you look in the pockets, you should see the color too, but this is a one color finish, so that's all there. The next thing, which is cool, is there's usually a code in here, and I forget what the whole code means, but I know the third digit in the code is the year of the body. So if I zoom in, look at that, 6. It's the third digit. Let me focus it better. Yeah, so 846 something. So the third digit on these 70 Fender, 70s, late 70s, the 6 is the year. So that is a 76 body. Okay, so we know now that the finish is original and the body is a 76. If you have an older P-bass, you should check in the pickup cavity. They would stencil a date in here with a pencil or a pen or however they did it in like the 60s. Sorry, my parents are talking, they're about to leave. Alright, so let's look at the electronics. So, first things first, pickups are not original. Okay, so these pickups are not original. First reason why, they're not gray. The bottom of 70s pickup should be gray. These are the magnetic poles, pole pieces, and then this piece around it, right here, not the pickup cover, right here is called the bobbin. That's what the pickup is like made out of, or the pole pieces are in, and they should be gray. These are black, and black bobbins were used up until 65. These are definitely not early 60s pickups. And the way I know that, first of all, why would you put such early pickups? Those are very expensive, by the way. Black bobbins, probably like over 700. Why would you put them in a 70s bass? And second of all, this label and these wires. So these wires are more like 60s wires. They're the cloth pullback wires where you don't snip them, you pull the cloth back and it reveals the braided metal. And this label here, in very small font, it says SPB, and that's Seymour Duncan. Focus it real quick. Doesn't want to focus? Okay, doesn't want to focus. Yeah, so SPB1. So those are Seymour Duncan pickups. Black bobbin is the reason why. Also, they don't look that old. The patina doesn't match other stuff. The wires are, that's how Seymour Duncan, that's what they do for their vintage pickups. They have that pullback wire. And then, what was I saying? And the label, yeah. The label says SPB. So it's basically telling us this is not an original pickup. You're not going to list this guitar for all original because it's not. Alright, let's move on to the pots. Pots are fun. They're fun to look at. Let me just move it closer. Okay. Sorry for the mess. Got a whole bunch of parts lying around. Okay, so here are the pots. And let's look. So first thing I usually look at is the wires. Obviously we know these are Seymour Duncan wires now, so that doesn't really matter. We know this has been tampered with. You can see right here there's literally a glob of solder. And someone literally snipped wires off right here. So it's been tampered with, but that's okay because the pots are original. That capacitor is original too. I've seen those a lot. That's just from my knowledge. So what you do when you look at the pots is you look at the codes. And this might be hard to see. Let me bend this back. But there's codes right here. And it's hard to see. Let me see if I can turn it. Right here. And that says sorry, my camera's on a tripod. This is like kind of hard. So that says 1377613. So when you look at a pot, I don't know every single pot, but I do know what I usually look for is the first 3 digits are the manufacturing code. So that's which company manufactured them. And you just got to look up which one is which. Off the top of my head, 137 is CTS. So the company CTS made these pots. And another one, if you see 304 is Stackpole. You can just look them up. There's all the information on the internet. So then the next 2 digits are the year. And here's 76. So these pots were made in 76. That's when they were stamped. And the next 2, I think, is the week of the year, 13. So that's the 13th week of 1976. These pots were made by CTS. And the other one, the solder is covering that code, as you can see right here. But I assume, because they look exactly the same, and they have like the same patina on them, they basically look identical. That's how I'm judging that they're also 76 CTS pots. So yeah, so that's all good. Input jack, it has that wear. I think this is how they're supposed to look. I think you can tell by the rings. I'm looking at it now. I haven't paid much attention. The washer underneath, you can't really see that. The washer underneath is really old, and it matches, like, see how it's like rusty here? It's rusty underneath as well. But I'm pretty sure. Yeah, the solder on it hasn't been touched. You can tell there's like a little bit of brown spots over it, and there's some yellowing coming off, like the flux. Like, you could just tell it's never been touched. It's super smooth. It just looks like a factory joint. Yeah, it looks fine. So that's an original jack. You could just, I guess, look them up and tell based off pictures. But this one looks legit, just based on how much wear it has, like the oxidation and stuff. Yeah, so this pickguard now, let's look at the pickguard. It's really easy because in the 70s, late 70s, they started putting a serial number on it. And funny enough, this serial number is 7646618. And the neck of this guitar, which I'll show you in a sec, is not that serial number. So this serial number, 76, I think that's late 70s. Or it could be 75. Hold on, let me make sure I'm not lying to you. Because the 700s, let's see. Let's look up the serial number here. 764 6618. Nah, I don't think that's right. Yeah, because this thing is saying 88, but I don't think... There should be an S before, right? Let me put in an S. 764 6618. Alright, let's see what it says. No, that's not, it's too long. Alright, well, I'm assuming it's... Because whenever they had these labels, it's at least starting from, I think, 76 to 79. I might be wrong, but I'm generally about those years. So if it has the serial number and it looks the way it does, then it's definitely from the late 70s. So I'm just going to say this pickguard is period correct, but definitely not original because the serial number is not the same. Alright, so I think we've covered everything on the body, right? I'm not missing anything. Strap blocks, I don't really care about those, but they look original. They're like rusted. Yeah, so this guitar is all original except the pickguard and pickups, which is fine. I mean, Seymour Duncan pickups are great. These are good. So, also, oh yeah, I forgot to mention that you can tell by the foam as well. I think they're supposed to be glued to the body, and they're not. They were just underneath the pickup, so that's like one of the first things I noticed. And then the black bobbins. Also, here's the back plate. It has this black guard, and it says some numbers on it. 01. 01 is a pbass code. 01 means pbass. You can look those up, but they basically have codes. That's more important for neck codes, which I'll get to right now. So, here's the neck. And, oh yeah, totally forgot the bridge. This is the original bridge. It has all the patina. This is just what they look like. So if yours looks like this, it's original to 70's. Yeah, it's in really good shape too. Alright. So, Fender. So here's the neck. So here's the headstock. So you can see serial number right here. S7. S7 is late 76, early 77. Then S8 would be like late 77, 78, 79 kind of. And then S9 is like 78, 79. They're pretty overlapping, and they're kind of careless with their serial numbers. It's hard to pinpoint them exactly by the serial number, and that's actually why you identify and take it apart and identify everything, because just by looking up a serial number you won't get its total story. And it's actually fun to figure out. You can tell a lot from taking these things apart. They have their own story. I mean, I had a 75 Strat with some guy's Social Security etched into the wood under the pickguard, so yeah, it's fun to find things like that. These are the original tuners. This is what they look like. They're like the lollipop style tuners. They have all the correct patina, and you can, just to be like completely safe, you can take one tuner off and check if there's any holes drilled, just to make sure that they were never replaced and then restored. Yeah, here's like the string tree, the Brisbee. This nut is not original, and I don't really like it either, because if I flip it around and show you this side, you can kind of see it sticking up there. See? So it's not seated that well. And all over this neck, there's some weird stuff going on these there's just weird stuff going on. Not really weird, but there's just like wear. See? Not weird, but this is just what it looks like when an instrument's been played. This is like definitely a player's bass. Frets are good. You have these like pearloid dots, Brazilian rosewood fretboard. These are definitely the original frets. One way to tell if it's a refret is you can check if there's any chipping at where the frets are. Not at the fret ends, but more like a bad refret. If you want to know what that looks like, is you'll see like pieces of the fretboard chipped off on either side. That's because the frets have tangs underneath them, and then when they're pulled out, right, if you pull them out wrong, you'll actually chip the fretboard. So you have to know how they were put in to take them out. Because I know like early, like in the 50s, the frets were slid in, and so if you take like a 50s like Telecaster and try to pull the frets out that way, those tangs were meant to slide in and out, so you'll actually chip the fretboard. So that's just one example. I'm not really sure how these were put in exactly, but I do know that this one looks pretty good. There's like a bunch of, not a bunch, but there's some like gunk a little bit. And the frets are fairly worn, but they look low, and that's how they were in the 70s. So I think these are original frets. I don't think these are a refret. Yeah, and they have like crazy oxidation right on the edges, so I'm gonna go ahead and say this is not a refret. Alright, so the back, the neck looks good. There's no really gouges that you can feel except on the sides of the fretboard, like these things, but that's all good. Nothing crazy in the back that you'll feel. And so let's move up to this neck right here. So this is interesting. When you're looking here, this is basically where the quality control guys stamp their names. You'll probably see names on your 70s like Torres, or I think like Herbert. I forget. I know Torres. I see Torres a lot. He's just one of the guys who work in Fender and stamp the quality controls. And honestly, people kind of use that in their listings and say like, oh, this was made by Torres, who worked at Fender for 50 years. Nah, he's the guy who inspected it. He's definitely an expert. Torres was definitely an expert because he's the one who's in charge of saying, okay, this neck is done to our specs. And that's because he's looked at a million necks and he knows what are good and what are bad, according to, Fender's, like how good the neck profile is or if it's finished properly, etc., etc. But he's not actually like making them. He's just making sure they're made well. And so he stamps his name there. If you watch any factory tours on YouTube, you'll see what I mean. That's just what quality control is. They're experts who are trained they have a ton of lights set up. Go watch the PRS factory tour that just came out on YouTube this year. That was pretty insightful to see how factories work. Fedora has a cool Fedora basses. They have a cool factory tour. So, alright, this video is getting long. Long story short, there's some red ink there. I think that's a quality control stamp. There's a black, so they would stamp them in circles. The green one is what you see most, but this label is covering it. There's a green circle there, and then a black circle there. These are different quality control stamps. One could be for like sanding the neck, one could be for like finishing. There's different experts for each sector. So like the finishing expert, that might have been his stamp, but the sanding expert might have been his stamp. Just, passing all the check marks to make sure that they have good quality instruments. And 70s were pretty good instruments. They get a lot of hate. They're heavy. There was a lot of cost-cutting things like the 3-bolt, which caused a lot of problems with the neck pocket shifting. But, I think they're really good, and I have my own argument on why vintage wood sounds better because of the moisture that's left the body over time. If you take a Tele from the 60s and if you get its original weight and then weight now, it's probably going to lose a few ounces because of how much moisture it lost. And I think that directly contributes to the resonation. The resonance from, I don't think that's a word, but I'm going to use that anyway, resonation from the body. I think it just has better harmonic overtones, just sounds better. And you also feel it more, I don't know, I don't want to get into it, but I'm a believer in the vintage myth. I've never seen that white thing before. I don't even know what those numbers are. Because again, I'm not an expert. I haven't seen a trillion of these, so I don't know what that white thing is. Never seen it. And then finally, you have this, which is the net code. So, how to read net code. This is the best part because this net code might be wrong or I may be an idiot. But if you can see right here, from left to right, because we're in America, you see 01100574. So how it works is you break up the first 4 digits into pairs. So the first 2 digits, 01, is the code of the instrument, and 01 stands for pbass. If you had a Music Master, it would be 49. There's just different 2-digit codes for each instrument. So 01 is pbass. Look these up, by the way, if you want to know. I don't know them off the top of my head. The next 2 digits is 10, and this is weird because this resembles what kind of neck it is. And honestly, this is a rosewood neck, and the code for rosewood is 01. So really, this code should read 01 pbass, 01 rosewood fingerboard. But instead, it says 0110, and 10 I'm pretty sure is a fretless maple neck, which, I don't know, does this look like a fretless maple neck to you? No. So unless someone literally milled this thing flat and slapped rosewood on it and made it look like Fender did it, or maybe it was a fretless and they did it from the fact, I don't know. You can make some conspiracies, or wherever I'm getting my information from about these codes, they didn't do their homework, or I didn't do my homework. But one way or another, whoever the idiot is, this code is weird. And then 0574, 05 is, I think it's the week. I think that's the 5th week of the year, and then the 3rd digit is 7, which is the year. The 3rd digit is definitely the year, and then the last digit, 4, is the day of the week. So I think this is the 5th week of 1977, and it's the 4th day of that week, which makes sense. This is an early 77 neck on a 76 body, but the 76 body is later on because the serial number is like higher up. So whatever the case may be with this neck, the bass was made in 76, around there, late 76, and sold in 77. I don't have the actual receipts to prove that. I just bought this bass today. I owned it for about 5 hours, but it looks good. Truss rod nut is good. It's turned. It's fun. Yeah, so I'm gonna leave it off with that. One thing to make sure is always check the neck. Whenever dealing with vintage instruments, always make sure the neck is straight, because the amount of times you'll buy guitars and they've been, kept in a case with the strings off, or they just warped over time, and nobody talks about that or tells you, but it's a really big problem because you'll never get good action, you'll never get rid of fret buzz, you'll never get like a solid playing instrument if you can't tame the neck. And yeah, so make sure these things, because you don't want to buy an instrument for $3,000 on like Reverb or eBay or even from Sam Ash and get it and then spend even more money because you can't get it to play well, and the tech won't even tell you, unless he's a good guy and he's your friend. They won't even tell you what's wrong. They'll just say you gotta play in the fretboard. No, the neck is literally warped over time because the pressure from the frets, the pressure from the strings, the tension, all that makes the wood bow, and wood is malleable, so it will bow or up bow, back bow. I have a jig where I can heat up the neck. I can heat it up and straighten it into, if it's like this, I can straighten it back out, or if it's like this, I can straighten it back out. And I do that to instruments I get that are warped, and you won't really know unless you sight it or use where is it? These are good. I like this tool. It's a notched straight edge, and this one is for guitars though. I don't know where the one for basses are, but yeah, you just put the beam on, and you basically measure the range to the neck, and then you use feeler gauges to see how much back bow or up bow is. One thing no one knows is you measure up bow at the 7th to 9th fret, but if you want to measure back bow, so how much the neck is like this, you actually measure it at the 1st fret. Because think about it, if it's like this, you put a straight edge on top, it's going to move like this because the hump is in the middle, so you measure it here. You measure the relief, that's what we call it, at the 1st fret, and that's how you check back bow. But yeah, that's my identification, so hope you enjoyed it and learned some things. Tell me things that I don't know, because I'm also learning, and it's fun to do this stuff. It's definitely like a little treasure hunt. So thanks, guys. Bye.